Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. As always, it's just an immense pleasure, a highlight of my day, to be able to chat and hobnob with fellow practitioners as we look at how we can best support our patients, how we can best support humanity with our natural health principles, which, as you and I know, are deeply, deeply embedded in the concept of truth. I particularly love this topic of kids' health, and it's because that I love having a pediatric aspect to a practice because you might say the children are so moldable, and they're developing their immune systems and their immune system balance, and we can offer so much to their future health, both from the microbiome phase to how the immune system develops. And boy, I'll tell you, if we have some parents that know the value of playing outdoors, being around other kids, having a good diet and not being railroaded into the fast foods and the junk foods and the sugars, and they're just raising the kids right for their health. There's so much going on with their young bodies that we can influence for their best happiness, their health, their minds, and everything to come. So for those who may not know me, I'm Jack Tips. I've been a clinician for, I have to say like 45 years or so. So I hope to share with you some clinical insight and experience, and our herbs and our natural health model have literally thousands of years of efficacy. And it's only more recently that I'm able to find scientific studies, the good old double-blind, triple-blind studies, a lot coming out of India because of the Ayurvedic tradition, and they want to prove that their herbal history has a scientific basis, and it does indeed. And we just keep coming back time and again that we can do so much with our natural health philosophy, even in today's world that is often so disturbing with, the radio frequencies and the chemicals and the denaturization of food and the very limited medical influences that are all based on, we know full well they're driving money. The amount of iatrogenic deaths is alarming. And so I think more and more I do see evidence that our database, that our constituents, that our demographics are leading the way toward a more optimal health. So while we have one model active in this country that people's health is far from perfect, and the more we can jam those little bodies of children with reactivity to build antibodies and exercise such limited perspectives of health, that people are so lost that they're falling into a pattern that they are becoming estranged from nature. It's our job to step in, and these children are developing their immune systems in childhood, and we know there's a pattern, there's a way that nature does this. And I'll tell you, they say until scientists can, literally create life or create a blade of grass or whatever, nature already has it. We're going to look at some philosophy here. Then I'm going to show you programs. One thing I love about working with children is we can get the parents a medicine chest of liquid herbal tinctures that can support their children. And then they call, well, what do I do? Little Tommy has an earache, or he has a tummy ache, or he's running a degree of fever. What do I do? What do I do to support his immune system to win? And and to support him to be more healthy. And we find with just the parental assistance of nature puts the child in a position of growing healthier and stronger and growing more toward this concept of perfect health. The reason I have perfect health up here in our first model of health is that the prevalent medical practice today does not start with any clue about what perfect health is, because perfect health is something that they say in the vernacular, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so they look at everyone as being broken, and they look at introducing artificial diseases to children in order to drive antibodies. But antibodies are only like 1/3 of the immune processes. And so we're hammering one system over and over and over. And we know that when there's an imbalance in the immunological response, we see asthmas and eczemas and autisms and so forth. And so this limited blinders on practice we see today, here we come along. We're going to talk a little bit now about the philosophy, and then we're going to get down to brass tacks here. For those maybe who've listened to me a few times, I'll cite this gentleman here who wrote a book about 200 years ago called The Organon of Medicine, and he was a brilliant thinker, and he set up the idea, well, let's not approach the human being from a fragmented, broken state of how do we fix this and whack-a-mole, and how do we fix that and whack-a-mole, and so forth. He says the body instinctively craves and wants, it's by nature moving, that young infant's body is moving toward perfect health. Can we as practitioners help that infant, that toddler, that young child? Can we help them achieve the greatest degree of the most perfect health that was innate within that body? So our good buddy here, Dr. Sam, last name Hahnemann, he said it's the vital force. He called it a dynamis. He knew that there was an innate intelligence of the body to try to maintain homeostasis. And he says this intelligence animates the human organism, and it reigns in supreme sovereignty, maintaining the homeostasis of all the parts of the living organism in a harmony that obliges wonderment. And so, wow, yeah, there's this mechanism, and it's in this child, but that child is immature. It gains from the parents. It gains from experience. And we want to be second fiddle to the processes of nature. And part of our job, too, is to help protect that there are ailments that children could encounter. There's things that we don't want them to run into when they're too immature. Hahnemann went on to say, it is the reasoning spirit, this innate intelligence inhabiting an organism, the human being, that when things are running well, when that little body is adaptable and having the exercise and the diet and the good sleep and the harmonies and the happiness and the nurture and all these things, is allowed to reach the lofty goal of human existence. So he's basically saying there's many of these factors that are relating to life itself and the ability to survive on planet Earth. So here we go. Here's some food for thought. Health is not avoiding illness, but overcoming illness and becoming stronger. This is how this little wee infant is going to learn. This little infant has an immune system. It's nurtured with an overshadowing immune system through breastfeeding. And it's going to be developing. How does it get along with the world? Is this going to be sensitive to poison ivy, or could he eat poison ivy? How is he going to react to the plants? How is he going to react to the animals? And we're always concerned, how is this infant going to mature and react to pathogens? And I give an example here. There's things we would love to shield this little infant from. I wrote infant meningitis is one, pertussis. These can be, life-threatening to this immature system. To the mature system, not such a big deal, but the child will not be such an infant at that time. And we also have to recognize that there's some little infants that are just ill from birth. But for the other 98%, 99% of our model, health is not avoiding illness. In fact, we know from science that the childhood illnesses, the earache, the tummy ache, the fever, the cough, these things, they all teach that immune system how to play the game of this lofty goal of human existence, how to play it and win. But one of the things we hold in natural health is certainly in childhood, that an illness, we should watch the child become stronger. We know that there's illnesses, particularly for adults, that knock them down. Let's say an adult gets mono, and then they get chronic fatigue syndrome. It knocked the stuffing out of them. Our job as health practitioners is to not only get them back to where they were before they got mono, but to get them back better than ever. And that is a possibility. That is within the human blueprint, but it's more dynamic with the infants, because literally the body is learning how to balance, the cytokine Th1, Th2 response, how to when and where to build antibodies, when to have that cell-mediated immunity, just take charge and take care of things and not even have a problem. And so we know that with many of the childhood illnesses, they serve to make the child stronger. So we have here another thought to share, and it's not the disease, but the body's innate responses. The disease is what happens when this internal regulatory mechanism is disturbed, and it reacts. It can react violently. It can react with diarrhea and runny nose and fevers and vomiting. And if the innate vital force, or this dynamis, if it is being threatened, it can react most violently. If we think of like projectile vomiting, and even on exposure to Vibrio or cholera, it can literally have such a violent reaction to the toxin that it dehydrates with diarrhea. So there can be a strong innate response to illnesses. And our job is, how do we mitigate a too strong response? How do we get a good response, and we get the body to learn and be more healthy? Now, we know that childhood illnesses help strengthen the immune system. They strengthen that individual body toward the fullest potential that body is going to be able to realize. The fullest potential, the perfect health ideal. It's nature's way for health and survival. So we're still on this model. Instead of all these broken parts, we're on this model of the body innately moving toward its most perfect health. And in that model, our lofty ideal, no one can be healthier than perfect. And if someone is close and is living and dwelling in that state of balanced, perfect health, then I'll say it again, we don't want to fix what ain't broken. And so here in nature, the child is growing and is healthy, and it's a perfect health. It's active, dynamic, it's flexible, it's adaptable. And maybe there's a flu going around, but the child stays healthy. Maybe there's a bug somewhere someone else struggles with and is getting help for, but this child is adaptable. If not, the child's vital force goes after it and it expresses symptoms. By those symptoms, we understand the illness and can help. And we'll get to the help part soon. So any modification of perfect health is only going to leave the person with a minus. See? So if we can establish our parameters of this little child is moving toward his or her most perfect health, then we have to be careful of what we do that is messing with that natural immune building process. And the perfect first response is the innate response, the cell-mediated immunity. And if that is balanced, and we often hear it in natural health as Th1, Th2, and it's the cytokine response, and bingo, it can take care of everything. It's not overreactive. It's not underreactive. It took care of business. Now, if the body gets a little rattled with that response, then antibodies become built, and that helps the remembrance. That helps to have more preparedness if should that child ever be challenged with that measles or that chicken pox again. Now, these antibodies are already in the breast milk. So as long as the child is breastfeeding, the mother's immune antibodies are present, and the child is having a protection during maybe the first year, the first 2 years, depending on how long the mother wishes to breastfeed. There's direct support during this time. This third player is building and working, but the child has his own epigenetic processes coming from the genetics that are already trained after millions of years of human beings countering, Helicobacter pylori, or encountering a fungus and so forth. These encounters with antigens and the various, pollens and plants and allergens that did. What do you think this third player is? We often look at the two immune systems, right? The acquired and the innate, or the humoral and the acquired immune system. Who's this third player here? I bet you were right on top of it. The third player is the gut microbiome, which we've learned is maybe some 70 to 80% of the entire human immune system. So this is a big deal that this gut microbiome is got to get its balance worked out. And this is why we have to be so careful with children, what they're eating. And sugars do not build a healthy gut microbiome. We have to be very, very judicious with the things that destroy the gut microbiome. You might think of chlorinated water. You might think of antibiotics in food. You might think about antibiotics for a little earache that maybe they weren't really needed, or even worse, an antibiotic because the child had a fever to a virus. And so we have to be very judicious about this gut microbiome. And as science moves us forward, we can understand symptoms and then maybe augment the gut microbiome, whether it be fermented foods or the infantus strain and things like that may be out of whack. We might even start looking at lab testing, look at the ratios of like Akkermansias to firmicutes to other varied species, some which are called commensals, and are extremely important. So they're not really commensal, are they? They're vital. And then the probiotics and how the body is handling other things. I want to bring a point here to bear. Immunity is so much more than antibodies. We're on a tangent right now in our culture and in our understanding of health, that everything is all about antibodies. antibodies just simply mean one thing. It means the person's had exposure to an illness. It does not mean they won't encounter the illness. It does not mean they won't struggle with that illness in the future. And it only provides a percentage across the population of what they're saying is an improved immunity. What we really have to watch here with antibodies is that they're not inflicted on a person before they're mature enough to work with those antibodies within the whole system. Okay, so here we go. The immune system is an innate intelligence involving the microbiomes, the acquired response, the anti-inflammation response, the innate immune response. It draws upon the bone marrow, the lymph nodes. It uses inflammation in a healthy way. It involves the appendix. Let's not cut it out. It involves the thymus. It involves the spleen. It involves the tonsils. Maybe we shouldn't be cutting them out, and so forth. You could probably throw the adenoids in, and there's other components. I have a study here that this is out of a study by a Spanish doctor back in 2013. I don't know. This study may have been set up in Cuba, but it certainly was run also simultaneously in Spain. They injected a nasty bacteria called leptospirosis into little mousies, little rats, and it has 100% fatality rate. They injected them, they died. Then they gave, this is out of the annals of what's called homeoprophylaxis, but they gave some of the mice an attenuated leptospirosis, attenuated to the point where there was no physical substance left, just the frequency, and they had an 80% survival rate. Now that's huge. I mean, we're sorry for the 20% that went belly up there. But the key is in no cases, before or after, even in the survival 80%, did they have antibodies. They did not produce antibodies, and yet they survived. And so this starts to let us understand loud and clear, antibodies are not the only criterion to judge the immune system. They're one criteria. So maybe we might look at stop fighting the disease and start looking at how do we support a child's body to win the immunological challenges and to return to perfect, or to return to the process of becoming more perfect, which is an innate drive within that child. Let's not cut them off from their own finish line. So we find that children could be living in perfect health. They continue in their health. They handle their childhood threats. They become stronger. They have balanced immunity. And when they do encounter one of those nasty pathogens out there, they can adapt. It doesn't mean that they won't have a sniffle or a discharge or a fever, but they'll win that challenge. Now they're healthy, happy children living in the earth environment in effective adaptation. So we're going to go ahead and say, because it was not said enough in the last 5 years, and in fact, there was even some counterpoints to it, natural immunity is nature's best. Natural immunity is the best immunity. Synthetically acquired immunity often is only to fragments of the whole disease. And forced creation of antibodies distracts the immune system. One of the studies that really caught my eye back during the COVID time was a military study in the U.S. military that showed that the soldiers that were given the coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, had more trouble with the flu. Now, they're both the flu and the designed SARS-CoV-2 They're both coronaviruses. See, and in the nature's order, as a child develops, let's say, to a herpetiform virus, they develop a proper response to chickenpox. It precludes a different form of that virus, which is going to be called shingles later. You see? And so nature's a little bit broader blanket. When we give just one little fragment, let's say of a little spike protein, we're missing out and we're allowing the mutations to run through humanity again and again. And it's a escalation war. It's a war of making it easy for, in this case, a virus we're talking about. It's making it easy for it to mutate and outthink the limitations that were forced into the human body. So nature's immunity, more broad blanket, more balanced, more adaptable. And this thing was millions of years in the making. It's a balanced immune response according to the body using all of its immunological resources. So there's a proper lymphatic cell mediated immunity to be instantly handling the challenge. There's antibody backup if and when the encounters require that. So let's consider our role. What can we do with children in our community to give them a competitive edge while respecting the role of nature to allow them to basically reach for the sun, to allow them to reach for their most perfect optimal health, not to start taking the subject of their most perfect health and introducing artificial diseases that then preclude them ever getting to optimal health. So we have a different mission here of healthy, happy, well-adjusted children. And it's not our job. Think about this. We're here as natural health practitioners to promote, maintain, and protect health in body, mind, and spirit. That's a pretty lofty goal here. Okay, medicine chest time. Wouldn't it be great if on entering a relationship with you as a practitioner, if your, let's say, parents wanted to have immediate first aid for their children and things that would assist with their own natural immunity development, and that they would assist with immune balance. It would assist their body to more rapidly and effectively gain that victory and thwart that illness, whether it be a streptococcus or a staphylococcus or a diplococcus or whatever, that their immune systems mature and become adaptable and they experience their health and happiness. And to do this without destroying the gut microbiome, without sacrificing the reach for perfect health and making and a person literally trading the acquisition of a disease for a little bit of a pseudo immunity to some nasty pathogen that maybe they haven't even ever encountered, and a system that might create an imbalanced immune system, which often now the science is just showing us time and again, when we imbalance the immune system, particularly in the gut microbiome, there's asthma, allergies, eczemas, hives, things like that come in the wake of that. So here we go. The common cold. And I'm showing you three formulas here. The TVIVI is Virox. That features the genus and species Lamatium dissectum, and the imperial attacker, which has got a yarrow element to it, and the tough play. Let's look at these. If you have these three tinctures, they sit on the medicine shelf. Their shelf life is years. And so so very healthy. And as we go through, we're going to talk about 13, 14 common ailments of children that really, if we just help them resolve, there's not treatment required. And these are illnesses that build their immune system, that build their adaptability. So let's look here. We're going to look at this tough play. And it has astragalus and other herbs in it. You can, it'll have, I think it's got 8 or 9 herbs in it. And here is the science: colds and influenza, review of diagnosis and conventional botanical and nutritional considerations. This study will show you the efficacy of astragalus for the common cold. Here it is. So the child starts coming down, I have a fever, I have a scratchy throat, I'm blowing my nose. What the parent can go straight to a formula like this, start supporting the immune system, and have that child gain mastery over the many, many variations of coronavirus that and rhinovirus that can cause the constellation of cold symptoms. And here we have the leptotania, which goes by the Latin name Lamatium dissectum in the TVIVI. And this will be cited specifically as being efficacious in this science, antiviral potentials of medicinal plants. You'll find this there in the PubMed. So I want you to know that there's science. It's not like, well, yeah, we've used these formulas for, since Doc Wheelwright's time 50 years ago, but science comes along and goes, yeah, there was a reason that they worked. And we have the echinacea, which is one. There's also Pau d'Arco that picks up the fungal sequels here in the imperial attacker formula. And our science says echinacea for preventing and treating the common cold. Yes, it's effective. The effect of echinacea on the prevention or treatment of respiratory tract infections. And so, see, we're starting to get some good tools here that can assist in the normal natural process. The kids are going to get a cough, they're going to get a fever, they're going to get a scratchy throat. This is nature's way. And now we have the ability to assist and see if their little bodies can't turn this around real quickly. Now we look at the respiratory syncytial virus, just any like upper respiratory infections. And here's 2 studies that show the efficacy here of, again, the astragalus from the tough play. And here we're looking at a CX formula, which stands for concentrated extract of R respiratory. We can hone in. We can be, you may not know with an ailment if it's viral or bacterial, but the R lung concentrated extract is particularly focused on supporting the immune system to take care of either one. It's also focused greatly on any bacterial sequel. And we have the imperial attacker backing this up, and we have the TVIVI. Looking more here at this lung formula, the concentrated extract of our lung, we're going to look here particularly at the herb lungwort. That makes up a good component of this formula. And sure enough, science comes along and has an article here, plant extracts and screening of their composition and oxidative properties, but they're going to point again now toward lungwort and lung protection of this lungwort herb having a positive impact. And we also see here that we have the golden seal factor and immunological axis of berberine. Berberine is a compound enrich in golden seal and other herbs. that has become kind of the darling of natural health science, because berberine has shown that it is so powerfully effective directly against some of the nasty bacteria that the young child has to develop their immunity. So, immunological axis of berberine in managing inflammation underlying chronic respiratory inflammatory diseases. It's not only will berberine handle bacteria, but look here, it is in the managing of the inflammation. That means it helps support the resolution of inflammation. It helps modulate the inflammatory response so that it's normal and healthy and the body can resolve it. How great is that, to be supporting the body with something that starts to build balanced immunity, as opposed to, let's say, an antibiotic that destroys the gut microbiome and maybe likely destroys the lung microbiome. And then the body is scrambling to try to use a little, Scotch tape and baling wire to put itself back together after that heavy-handed approach. And here it says the immunomodulatory and anti-inflammatory effects of berberine in lung tissue and its potential application in prophylaxis and treatment. Oh, the little child gets a cough. What a wonderful support. And it doesn't do the job for the child. The child's immune system comes up and says, okay, I've got to handle this, and it handles it. But here we have a coach. We have someone saying, okay, let's modulate the immune system. Let's go with the inflammation. Let's get it knocked out. But let's also modulate ourselves out of the inflammation and emerge stronger than before. That's the point here that we can have. You might be familiar with roseola or something called sixth disease. And yep, there's a fifth and a seventh as well. But it's a herpetiform virus. So we're looking, gosh, it's the same three things that we put on the medicine chest. The TVI-VI is a masterful viral support. Imperial attacker, likewise. Tough play is the immunological formula. I'd like to express a note of thanks to Nicole Sugihara, who really ramrodded getting these children's kids play formulas made, coming from her heart, that the children could be treated better, children could be more healthy, and that the company needed to step up and support the next generation. Earaches. Just a little bit of some inflammation there in the eustachian tube, in the medial part of the ear. And here we go with two studies pointing toward ingredients in the T3 formula as being efficacious for helping the child's body resolve earaches and ear infections. You can get more fancy if there's a fusion or not a fusion, even right side, left side. Many parents will have like garlic eardrops and things like that they use as well. But the thing we want to see the child overcome any concern with the ear, and we want to see it not come back. And so often we've seen in clinical practice that the natural treatment of ear conditions just gets rid of it, and the child doesn't have to keep going down the losing road of antibiotic after antibiotic or sticking drainage tubes in, which the science actually has come along and said don't really work all that great anyway. But still, I find that it's a considered therapy. Like once these therapies get in place, you just, you can't get rid of them, even when the science says they're not really working. Again, we're looking at the medicine chest. My goodness, it's the same three formulas on the left. And now we're looking at virus, tummy bugs, or gastroenteritis. All we're doing is supporting the immune system. We have our immune balance, our immune activators. We have the antivirals of the TBIVI and the imperial attacker. We have bacterial sequels covered, and we're going to bring in a probiotic. Only makes sense, right? If it's something going on in the tummy, we want the powerful probiotics, those microbes, to go in and ride herd on any pathogens. And that might have been acquired through food or putting the hands in the mouth, and something that tipped the scale. I'll say this, the MBC is very powerful. It can be even a half a capsule or a third of a capsule can be sprinkled in a little applesauce, or put in a little peanut butter on a celery stick or whatever. And it can be sprinkled in the tongue. It can be put in a little water and squirt down the throat with a syringe. And so we're looking at the power of probiotics here, using microbes to take care of microbes, while at the same time we're supporting the immune system to deal with any acquired toxins that might get into the bloodstream from the GI tract, and to go ahead and take care of business so there's not the loose stool and cramping and fevers and so forth. But the amazing thing so often here is we just keep looking at, a small amount of formulas. Now we're going to expand and get a few more tinctures to handle a few more things. So here we're looking at hoof and mouth. I'm teasing. We're looking at hand, foot, mouth disease, which is basically just another virus. So, the herbs will show broad blanket efficacy against certain species of virus and not to others. But again, when we start thinking a virus is a virus, we'll see the TBIVI come up with usually a strong position of efficacy. And we will see if it has a minor position, then the imperial attacker picks up a different botanical spectrum. And of course, we've discussed the tough play formula, which is an immune system booster. But again, when we boost the immune system, we're not making inflammation worse. We're not boosting the inflammation. We're boosting the balance and the effectiveness. And here we show the effect of astragalus on, and when it said injecta here, they did inject it, the extract, into the subjects in the lab test. So we're not going to be injecting the baby with astragalus, but it shows its efficacy on the Coxsackie virus. And so at least we now have the confidence that there's components. Now, these tinctures go down into the gut microbiome processes the components of these tinctures and actually makes the antibiotics or makes the antiviral molecules that the body needs. So again, we're supporting the body, we're supporting the gut microbiome to help the body resolve this situation. And not to be outdone with sixth disease, here's the fifth disease, which is a rashing that occurs. It's also a virus rash, but a different virus. It's a parvo. But we're looking right back to the same three tinctures that ought to be sitting in every mother and father's medicine chest: the TBIVI, the imperial attacker, and the tough play, to get a broad blanket, because we don't know the genetics and epigenetics of the child. We wish we did, because we might find that a child is particularly great on astragalus, or another one, their system responds beautifully to yarrow. It has to do with their individual genes and their epigenetic processes and the components of their gut microbiome. So at this point in herbal evolution, we're looking for those that are tried and true, those that have thousands of years of helping people. And we're also, with these three formulas, we're throwing a broad blanket of support. Sore and strep throats. Well, here we're going to look at the berberine, and that's in the T3 because of the golden seal and the Oregon grapefruit, both very rich plants in berberine. Berberine is just proven again and again, literally in hundreds of scientific studies, this component of the whole herb, where some people favor just taking berberine because now they've jerked an isolate form out of the herb, and now they're going to magnify it and throw it into the body. That's getting a little bit on the edge of what allopathic drugs do, is they find the compound in the herb, then they synthetically make something that resembles it, usually out of things like coal tar and other toxins, and then they'll patent it, and that becomes an antibiotic. So, and the same processes with different molds and fungi, as they'll take in components and synthetically they'll synthesize them. So here we have antibacterial activity and mechanism of berberine against streptococcus. So, excuse me, we have a precedent here, and we also see here the management of pharyngitis, inhibition of streptococcus, and we're looking at two different forms of streptococcus. I wanted to mention here the TVI-VI is in this program. The leptotania, the lamatium, it doesn't necessarily know a virus from a bacteria. It doesn't know a male from a female. It works, and the studies on the leptotania, there's many studies against the bacteria. It's been very effective. There's studies about anthrax and lamatium being efficacious. I'll tell you a little bit more on the lamatium and the leptotania as we go a little bit further in this. So here again, the strep throat and the berberine, I went ahead and I took out the TVI-VI, which ought to be there, and was on the prior slide. But now we're going to look at T-Gold, which is just more of the golden seal, more of the berberine, stronger position on helping, because we want to see the child turn the sore throat around. Not only can it be painful and have a lot of crying and inability to swallow and all of that, we want to see the body rally, and we want those the anti-strep factors. We want those to come rushing and get this taken care of, because inevitably human beings are going to be exposed to the streptococcus species, the various species. Some are probiotic. A few of them are pathogenic, and we want to get that strain. So here we go. We might just want to tip our hats, if you're so adorned right now, to Dr. Ernest Krebs. During the Spanish flu, influenza, viral epidemic, pandemic, he noticed in Nevada that the Native Americans were staying healthy, and he found that they were using lamatium at a time when in the San Francisco area there were thousands of deaths from the flu. Krebs acquired a supply of the extract of the lamatium and started treating people, and had such a high degree of efficacy that he was a candidate for the Nobel Prize. When he tried to bring the lamatium forward, medical science decided that it was hard to standardize and what component of the herb was really responsible. And as they fragmented the thing, they fragmented the one thing that had some of the highest degree of survivability for people involved in the terrible Spanish flu of over 100 years ago. So the great medical doctor discovered, just by observing discovered something that works, and he went with it. You might call that evidence-based medicine. He said, "Oh, the evidence is the native or the indigenous Americans were not dying, and the immigrants to this country were dying hand over fist." And so he intervened there. I believe he's responsible or is cited for saving something like 40,000 lives during this epidemic. Numbers change, and I'm just speaking from memory, but whether it was 4,000 or 40,000, he definitely was a candidate for the Nobel Prize because of his loving work during. And we have that. We have the limation in the TVI-VI and a few other formulas. More recently, we have this. I put all these numbers up there because the first virus has simply been encouraged to mutate. You can maybe a subject for another time when I say encouraged to mutate, but it's gone through permutations and mutations, and it continues to circulate and incubate. And we find here, in this case, we're going to bring a new formula to bear, the cat's claw and Uncaria tomentosa. And both it and the VIVI, the TVI-VI, have shown efficacy in this regard, but the cat's claw went to the top of the class. And also this formula can be helpful, what they call spike protein damage, and that's where people are exhibiting vascular issues. And I put here all exogenous sources, so whether it was deliberately acquired or acquired in the airways, we have a formula that can lend some assistance to people getting their complete recovery over that. And also, as I mentioned before, the TVI-VI has some efficacy. It just came out that the science toward the cat's claw showed a little bit better handling, but just think what you could do with the two together, and they're a marriage made in heaven. Often we see in infants something called cradle cap or thrush. The infant's one of his first challenges with the microbial world is with fungus. And it's mainly the yeast that decides to be opportunistic and mutate itself toward a fungal species. We all are pretty familiar with Candida albicans. And so there's two formulas. So we've brought in some new ones here. One called T4, which is Fung DX. It's a tincture, and then the Tyra-Chi, the very famous reverse polarity Pau-D'Arco combination that built a milestone presence for its effectiveness. Sometimes the kiddos, they're rubbing their eyes and, playing with other little rugrat grubbers and so forth, and they're going to get this thing called conjunctivitis or pink eye. And look where we're back to. We're back to using imperial attacker and tough play, and we've already been through the T3. I'm just showing you some pretty pictures here of astragalus and the purple coneflower and these wonderful botanicals that just look so vibrant, and the yarrow there in the bottom right. Oh yeah, they can get worms too. Medical science said there's 4 microbial challenges for our children: bacteria, virus, fungus, and parasites. And it's nice to have formulas that deal with whatever comes. And here, primarily, we're revealing the VRM2 and the concentrated extract. VRM2 can handle such things as the small nematodes and roundworms and so forth. MPR is a pumpkin oil that is perturbing to parasites, and it can be taken as a capsule or it can be squeezed into other foods. It's the Curcubito pepo, which is a tiny gourd. It's basically a pumpkin. And so basically you're given pumpkin oil for its medicinal properties, but the VRM2 is the leader, and put in water and good quantities used, you've got efficacious formula for helping banish the pinworms. Wanted to mention that part of the development of children, I mentioned when we started, was exercise and diet and good sleep and good play together and nurture. And here's where we have two key formulas that support the development of the immune system, the development of the brain. And so fun play and brainy play. Brainy play capitalizes on the DHA, the omega-3 that is so responsible for getting full brain potential. And fun play provides all the arrays of vitamins and minerals that science will tell us again and again. That certain vitamins, certain minerals support the development of the immune system, and that can be added with the process of just good nourishment. Here, let's just summarize some of the basis of our discussion here. Germs strengthen the immune system. Oversanitation can weaken the immune system. Not every germ should a child rush out and encounter. We mentioned it only makes sense to stay away from the illnesses of like meningitis and pertussis early in life. Parents should have a choice about how to deal with those, either wait for maturity. There's also medical preventatives and so forth. In nature's plan, germs will help prevent allergies and asthma. And so there's quite a bit now of science saying that the use of antibiotics in childhood are setting the stage, particularly if they're used early in a child's life, that now the child is more prone to allergies and asthma. There's also research that says, rolling around in the dirt, getting some of those soil-based microorganisms to challenge the immune system, to being around animals and dander, that these early, normal, natural life processes of living on Earth help build the immune system and help preclude asthma, allergies, and so forth. Now, the science shows us here that exposure to germs in early childhood support lifelong natural killer T cell function. It's like once the immune system learns these things, it's got it for life. If you don't have that experience, then the child is weaker and the adult is weaker. And also the germs help prevent hyperexpression of the innate immune and cytokines. Remember, like when the COVID was such a threat to so many people because their innate immune response, they would talk about the cascades of cytokines. Well, where was the brakes? Where was the knowledge? Where was the balance of those people's immune systems? And why didn't they have it? And so it was more than just, some genes profiles have it and some don't. Now we have to have an indictment of how these people have been brought up and treated. What have they eaten? What medical procedures have they engaged? Why were so many people out of balance and having such violent cytokine reactions, when it means that as they grew up in life, they did not attain the more mature process of that perfect health. They never got near nature's plan. What precluded it? Was it diet? Was it antibiotics? That would be a study right there for quite a few PhDs. Some science here for you. Early exposure to germs have lasting benefits. So we know that when a child comes into this world, they're going to have earaches and tummy aches and fevers and coughs. They're going to have colds and flus. Is not the wiser position to properly prepare and support the child. Microbial exposure during early life has persistent effects on natural T killer cell function. Persistent effects, meaning that what you go through in life, where health is not the absence of illness, but health is the ability to engage an illness, maybe to have reasonable, milder symptoms. In other words, fever within the proper range, runny nose within the proper range, and quick resolution of these illnesses. So here's what we've talked about. The top two are the nutrients, one for the parasites, the bacteria. I don't see the T gold here, but it's a companion to the T3. Then we have our tried and true imperial attacker, tough play. We have the fungal species, the T4 and the Tyra-Chi. We have the viral species represented with the TVI-VI. And of course, we go back over to imperial attacker and tough play. And we have one particularly because children's lungs, everywhere they're exposed to the external world, the digestive tract, the lungs, the skin, these are going to be targets where the immune balance. And finally, a probiotic. I want to thank you guys so much for your attentiveness. I think you can see a little bit of the excitement that for parents who choose to have their children be all they can be, to have them reach for that philosophical concept that we've dealt with called perfect health. That the acquired childhood ailments and illnesses are part of nature's system to create an adaptive, thriving, balanced immune system. And that means when life throws new things at the mature person, their system is already ready to deal with it, and they continue on in optimal health. What we do with children sets the precedent for the adult. That's part of the joy of helping and being of service to the wee ones in our community. Thank you so much.